We are speaking today with President Henry B. Eyring, first counselor in the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. President Eyring served as the 10th president of BYU, Idaho, then Ricks College, from 1971 to 1978. Welcome, President Eyring. We're glad to have you with us today.
So nice to be with you.
I'd like to begin by just discussing a few things you may have experienced prior to coming to campus. What did you know about the school before you were invited to serve there?
Just a little bit. I had grown up in New Jersey and gone to school after my family moved me to Utah, in Utah, but then away to school after that. And so I was a person who had not much opportunity to learn about Ricks College. And so I knew very little. I knew there was a Ricks College, and that's about it.
What was your initial reaction when you learned that you were going to be invited to serve at the university?
I need to say a little of how that happened. I was a professor at Stanford University, had been there for 9 years, and had tenure, which meant that I was expecting to stay there for the rest of my career, and got a phone call at my office at Stanford from Elder Neil A. Maxwell, not then elder, he was the new commissioner of education. I guess I knew that. I'd met him once before in my life. He called me at my office and said, "I'd like to see you." And I said, "Well, if I'm ever in Salt Lake City, I'll be sure to give a call." And he said, No, I mean tomorrow. And I thought, well, I have classes to teach. And I said, he said, "Well, you can get someone to take those for you, can't you?" And I said, "Yes. And I'll come see you tomorrow in Salt Lake." So I got a plane to fly up and went to my father's home. He knew my father because they'd been at the University of Utah at the same time. So he met me in my father's living room, sitting on the couch in a ski jacket. And I thought, well, this is an informal, pleasant sort of thing. And I sat down next to him. My father got out of the room, probably listening in the kitchen to see what was happening. And Brother Maxwell said, first words out of his mouth, "I'd like to ask you to be the president of Ricks College." I had never conceived of having there'd been no contact with me at all of any kind. He asked me to be the president of Ricks College, sitting there for essentially the first time, other than I had met him once casually at a talk. So I said, well, I'll have to think about it. And he said, well, you can think about it all you'd like to. We'll be seeing the First Presidency tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And so I went downstairs in the bedroom where I used to live in my parents' home, waiting for this surprise interview. And I prayed and asking what this was about. I had no information at all about this. So I went in to see the First Presidency. Harold B. Lee and N. Eldon Tanner met me in the First Presidency's room, a room where I now go all the time. And President Joseph Fielding Smith was not there, and he walked in the room, said not a word, and sat down between the two of them after we'd been talking for a while, and never mentioned, in a 1-hour interview, never mentioned Ricks College. And so all I knew, I'd been asked the night before to be the president of Ricks College, and here I was meeting for the first time with the First Presidency. And at one stage in the middle of it, President Joseph Fielding Smith had not said a word. President Lee hit his knee. President Smith is sitting between the two of them and said, "Do you believe this could be the prophet of God?" And I said, "I know it is." That's it. Other than that, we just talked about youth, and they knew I was a bishop in California, and just that's all. And after this 1-hour interview with the First Presidency, never mentioning Ricks College in the interview at all, I then walked out and saw the presiding bishopric was waiting. I now know, having later been they were waiting for 1 hour for their regular meeting while I had this strange interview with the First Presidency. And Elder Maxwell took me out to put me in a cab to go back to California and said, "Well, you've got the job if you want it." It had never been discussed with the First Presidency. I had no idea what it was all about. Got in the cab and went back to California, and I began to pray about what it was. And I think it's a little too personal to say, but got an answer that this is my school. And so I called Elder Maxwell and said, "I'm coming." So I knew nothing of the job, knew nothing about what was going on, knew only that the school existed, but I had already been hired. I guess hired is the word. So then I arrived at Ricks College with only that introduction, had never been on the campus, had never seen, knew essentially nothing about it. So that's how I got there.
Wow, that's remarkable.
It was very remarkable. And I only know that later, as I was being inaugurated, one of the members of the search committee, there had apparently been a search committee, but no search, I never met anybody, never supplied any information. So I was one of the search committee, a senior apostle said, "I hope you know something unusual is going on here." And I said, yes. And so I know nothing about how I got there. I know now, later on, having been Commissioner of Education, we have search committees. It's all done in a very formal way, the way it is. But in my case, no committee, no interviews, no information, no nothing. Just a phone call from later Elder Neil A. Maxwell to say, "I'd like to see you in Salt Lake." So that's the whole story.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's remarkable. How did the Spirit prepare you for your service?
Always, I've now learned, after having watched this a number of times, they invite the new president of Ricks College or BYU Idaho to come into a Board of Education meeting, which was the whole 12 in the first presidency. And I did not know that they'd asked me to say something. So I'm here at this first meeting with the first presidency and all, and I think at that stage I had maybe been to the campus once, but I knew almost nothing. And they said, "Would you like to make a speech?" And my speech was to say, I have never been the president of a university, of a college. I have no idea what's needed or what's to be done, but I'll pray and I'll find out what the Lord wants to do, and I'll get myself lined up with it, and I won't fail. And that was it. And sat down. And so that was, I've heard others give acceptance speeches before, and none so brief as was mine. But mine was just honest, as I didn't know a thing about it, but I knew it was the Lord's school. And so I knew I'd be okay if I could just find out what he wanted to do.
When you knew you were going to serve on campus after the invitation and such, did you seek counsel from anyone or talk to anyone? And if so, what did they say?
No, no one.
Okay. The Lord.
Yeah. Prayed a little.
Yeah, the best. Well, when you came to campus, what institutional or individual strengths did you notice?
Actually, again, coming in, you see, you have to understand, I'd come from Stanford, I'd been at Harvard, been at MIT, so I knew those kinds of places, and it was the time of the rebellions. In fact, my office at Stanford had its window broken during one of the riots, and they didn't fix it for a while because they figured it'll get broken again. So you have to understand the world in which I came to Rexburg. And so about all I can say is that I knew I was in a place unlike anything I had ever seen before. And if I had an impression come over me, it was to say, forget everything you think you know. Just don't change this place much. Just keep it on its foundation. And so I came in just struck with what was already there. What was there was teachers. You remember the man that preceded me was 27 years, the president, President Clark, 27 years. So here comes this kid from California. I'm sure they thought I was from another planet. You know, I mean, here I was coming into this situation. And I knew I was coming into another planet. I knew it was like nothing I'd ever seen. And so I was alert to what I found. And what I found was teachers more concerned with their students than I ever thought it was possible for a university. I mean, I'd had nice university professors over the years who were very kind to me. I'd never seen anything like these people. No personal ambitions, no. In fact, when they came there, they came because it was not famous, not anything fancy. A number of them were invited to go other places and said, no, I like this place where they care about students. All they cared about was students. And all I heard was stories of what they saw happen in the lives of their students. And so I knew that while I'd had nice teachers and I'd had nice professors and I'd seen great ones who took personal interest in me, I had never seen a whole place a whole campus where the people were not interested in themselves, only interested in their students, and thrilled to take very ordinary people and build them up so they do extraordinary things. So all I wanted to tell you, this student came and he didn't have any qualifications. And by the way, it was open enrollment, and so it was a place where people went, many of whom had no thought of ever going anywhere. Really, they were just there at Little Rick's College. And they'd take these people and turn them into folks that then did wonderful things. And every professor would tell stories of some very ordinary student who then bloomed. So I could see that about the place, that the Lord was up in everybody's mind. People were bearing testimony all the time in classes, and that they were taking satisfaction in taking very humble people and lifting them up to higher heights than they ever thought they could go. So that's what I saw.
Did you notice any needs when you arrived on campus, or even opportunities that situation might provide? No.
In fact, what's interesting is the only innovation I brought. Here I was coming from Stanford. I have no farming background. My father and mother were from agricultural backgrounds, but I'd never known anything. I prayed and got a committee together of what great thing could we do, to help the school. And they came back with one recommendation: strengthen the agriculture program. So here I am, this guy from, outside. And so what I did is I did make a major move in agriculture. And I knew when we did it that it had nothing to do with job preparation. It had nothing to do with prestige. It was to keep the place on its rural roots. That anything that we could do that would keep it close to the good old, the poor folk who pioneered up there, that was the route that we needed to be on. So the agriculture program, to this day, I thought, well, I don't know if they'll ever get jobs. I don't know why we're doing this, but it was because I did see that one thing. Again, the notion of saying, don't hurt this place. Put it as near as you can on its real roots: deep faith, humility, sort of the soil kind of a feeling. And that's about all I saw at the beginning. And again, at the end, I thought if they tried to praise me when I left, the great things that we built a lot of buildings, we did a lot of things that looked like great progress. And I always felt they gave me the wrong tribute. I didn't wreck it. If anything, I tried to enhance what I knew it always was, this humble, deeply faithful pioneer school. And considering where I'd been, give me credit, at least I never thought that any of that had anything to do with what this place was going to be. I didn't know what it was going to be. I just knew what it was going to feel like. It was going to feel like the Lord's School in the country with humble people who would then be lifted higher than they had any right to expect that they could go. So,
well, as you set about to achieve some of those things that you just mentioned, did you receive and feel any help from heaven with you and your colleagues in accomplishing that? And if so, maybe how?
I think the whole thing was heaven. You see, obviously, if that's what you're trying to do is to let the Lord keep His school the way He wants His school, then of course, to the extent that we were able to do that, it's all from heaven. And then good, wonderful people. You can't name them all. I can just think of some who had wonderful offers to go somewhere else, and they said, no, this is my kind of place. And so I would say it was people, all the faculty and many of the administrators all had that same feeling. I had nobody urging me to make it something famous or make it great. Just keep it what it was. In fact, I'll tell a story that the basketball coach, who when I first arrived, I knew nothing about, of course, what was going on. He said, here we recruit athletes. We want to do well. We're in a league. This was basketball they were playing. And the schools we play against all have players that come from city settings where they wouldn't live our standards. Do you see this stack? He said, here's a stack of people. He told me how high they could jump and how well they could play. And he said, now these are who we could have, but we'd have to take people who wouldn't be quite our kind of people. my question to you, President Eyring, is do you want to win? And I said, to win, would I have to take those people? And he said, yes. I said, I don't want to win. But what was really nice is here was a coach, and coaches like to win. And he said, wonderful. Took all those cards and put them in a drawer and went ahead saying, no, we'll win with who we can get, who are our kind of people. So I would say that he and all of the people that were there, they recognized that what we had was precious and that for any kind of achievement or any kind of recognition, they wouldn't want to risk anything of what we had. And so I'd say, yeah. I'm just naming one, but there were so many.
Well, maybe a little bit of a personal question. How did your experience at the school benefit you individually or your family?
Oh, it saved me and my family. I was on a path, you see. I mean, I was on a path of a career. And, of course, by going to Ricks College, the career was over. I mean, in terms of the Harvard, Stanford, MIT kinds of thing. They were still nice to me, by the way. They would send me Christmas cards, but after that. So it was wonderful because it got my mind off the idea of my own career. And to sort of say, well, forget career. I'm here at a junior college in Idaho, and there's nowhere after this, so let's just do the best we can with this. So it was wonderful to kind of get my head straight. And then for my children to take them out of California, where we were living in a very, very different world, and they got farm jobs. And to this day, Henry, who you know, and his brother Stuart were taken up on a farm, a dry farm up nearby, by my home teacher, who said to me, look, you don't know how to raise these boys, I'll raise them. And he took them every summer up on his dry farm. These guys were just very young, driving his equipment, and so yeah, for my family, it took them out of this sort of fast-track California to heaven in terms of where you raise a boy. Because what he was teaching them was what Ricks College had always taught, hard work. We can do anything, even when it's, these were little kids driving this fancy equipment up on the hillside. Yeah, for my family, it transformed me and my family away from a kind of a view of what success was and what life was like. Yeah. So I can't, in fact, it gets me emotional just to think about it. What it did for me is, save my life sounds wrong because I would have done fine. I was a bishop in Stanford and I probably would have spiritually done okay, but I would not have had the chance to get this feeling of what it's like to forget yourself. As President Hinckley's father said to him in the mission, forget yourself and go to work. And that's what it did for me. In fact, it still is good for me. You see, one time someone said they chose a president of BYU at the same time. They chose you. Why didn't they send you to Provo? You just went to Little Ricks College. And I felt like it's because Heavenly Father loved me. And he knew that that would be the place that would keep me with my, quote, feet on the ground. And it was wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, now we have BYU Idaho.
Yeah, we do.
And how has it performed relative to your expectations?
Well, you have to remember, I am the man who all the years I was the president of Ricks College would tell every booster who wanted to have a four-year school, I say, just be grateful for what you have. So I didn't see it coming at all. So when you say, how did it fulfill my expectations? I didn't see that, you see. Had you asked me at the time and told me that was going to happen, it would have frightened me because obviously to be a four-year school, to be as great as it's becoming, would have looked dangerous to me because it would have, all the temptations of forgetting who you really are. So I am just amazed. My expectations was that the Lord wouldn't lose this wonderful thing. And to my amazement, he's been able to take it into a great university, and he hasn't lost it. And that's a tribute to President Bednar. That's a tribute to all who followed President Bednar, is to take it into all the places that I would have seen as very dangerous, you see, is to begin to think you're something special, now to allow them to be really something very special. In fact, I think unique in the world, and yet still have the spirit of just the dry farmer who took my boys up on the farm. So when you say, how has it met my expectations, it's exceeded them because the Lord's been able to do things that I would have thought was too dangerous to try if you're really trying to keep a humble spiritual atmosphere. And if anything, the spirit of humility is as greater, maybe more, as it ever was. And then the excellence is beyond. I would be dishonest if I said I had any expectation. I didn't think it was possible. Do you see what I mean? I knew the Lord could do whatever he wanted to do, but with human beings, to take that kind of trust, to allow them to have all that tremendous growth, not just in the facilities, but who they are and the kind of students that are now coming. It would be unfair to say it met my expectations. It went beyond anything I would have dreamed of. Yeah.
What do you hope to see in the future with BYU Idaho?
I'm humble. Since I couldn't see this, I think I won't talk about what's next. I would think probably, which I've said the few times I've been back on campus, is that what will happen if this miracle continues is you will see students of greater capacity, particularly in leadership and ingenuity and able to do things, unlike anything we've ever seen before in the church. And the Lord will just do more of that, and I just don't know how wonderful it'll be. I have a feeling that it will, maybe it's a feeling of a danger. It will become world famous, and isn't that dangerous? It'll become world famous for the kind of students that come out of it, because they will be tremendously able. They will rise to the top of all sorts of situations, but they will still be the humble people that I found when I was there. So I expect miracles. I don't know what form it'll take. I'll take a guess at it. My guess is it will be more in the form of leadership's the wrong word because it sounds like, being stake presidents or being something important. People that will make a difference. Lots of them. And it'll seem unreasonable that many of them should come from one place. And my only worry is that we'll start to notice it and that the world in praising us could undercut what actually is making it possible. I think it's God that's making it possible. And so I don't know, I can't tell you what form it'll take, whether it'll be political leadership or organizational leadership or just wonderful families. I don't know what it'll be, but it will be remarkable. And somehow, since the Lord has shown he can do it, he can do marvelous things and not lose the humility and the faith that the thing is built on. That'll be what'll be fun to see. And as I say, I honestly believe that we haven't seen the beginning even yet much. I mean, it's hard to describe, you see, because I don't know what it will be, but it will be, President Clark has been raised up for it. He's just remarkable. He comes, you see, out of a background much fancier than mine, and yet it hasn't had any effect in terms of ego and only capacity and deep faith and a feeling of integrity of the students. For the students he has, and they also expects of them. Just remarkable. So I wish I could tell you more things. I would say now one of the things that you'll be wondering is how can the alumni, how can the supporters of this place help it go forward? Just want what the Lord wants. Yeah, that's all. All they have to do is take an attitude that says, look, it's his school, I want to help. Anything I can do to help, and then let the Lord lead it. I think what's interesting about donors is they very often want to donate to shape it, and my suggestion is donate to help it and let the Lord shape it. And the kinds of restrained giving, where you don't say, I want a bowling alley or I want this kind of thing, which sometimes happens, by the way. We've had a number of gifts over the years. As commissioner, I've been commissioner of education for years, so I've watched this process. Donors who try to shape the place don't do quite as much as the ones who want to help the Lord shape the place. And so as much as they can, mostly towards students, because the place is student-oriented. Then just encourage students, every way you can, in the way you support the institution. And love it for what it is, not for what the world would admire. It's a absolutely unique place. And if they can just appreciate that and try to help it stay that way and then become whatever it is the Lord wants, they are needed. The support of the not the donors, it's the people that love the place. Maybe the thing to do, this is maybe not what you wanted, but you didn't ask me what happened. What's the most interesting thing that happened while I was at Ricks College? Well, the Teton Dam broke. And right near the end of the time that I was there, and I learned some things there about that place that will stay with me forever. I was in the temple in Idaho Falls on the Saturday. The dam broke. That's important. That I was there for the wedding of one of our faculty members who'd been in my ward at Stanford and had not married, and now she was getting married, and there I was in the Idaho Falls Temple. As we were coming out of the Idaho Falls Temple, President Groberg, who was the president of the temple, said, the Teton Dam has just broken. And my wife and I were there. We left our two younger sons alone with a babysitter in Rexburg who did not speak English. Our two older sons were up on the mountain farming with Brother Moore. We knew the Teton Dam broke. We had no idea what that meant, except they said there's a wall of water 10 feet high heading for Rexburg. So we tried to head back to Rexburg, and the police stopped us. We had to stay overnight and had no way of knowing whether our children were alive or not. And my wife looked at me during the night and she said, how can you sleep? And I said, well, I know the kids are okay. And I'll need my strength in the morning because the college will play some part in the recovery, whatever it is. So we arrived and found out the boys. By the way, the great story, I hope it's true. Henry, you can check, my son. He was the oldest of the boys. They said, Brother Moore, shouldn't we go home to see what they could see the dam had broken? And he said, no, we said we're going to start and we're going to finish. And we began the day and we're going to finish the day. And they stayed up there, didn't go home until after they had finished their plowing or whatever they were doing. Again, that's a Ricks College story. They were, we stay at what we say we're going to do. Anyway, we got back to Rexburg. The kids were okay. Henry and his brother Stuart were okay. And then we watched the recovery. And you don't know Ricks College. And, it isn't just then it was the Rexburg State, but Ricks College was the recovery place. The head of the National Disaster Agency came after about the second day, and President Ricks was running. He was then in charge, the stake president in charge of all the recovery. And the man said, now what we do in a disaster is this, and he tapped off this. And President Ricks said, we've already done that. And then he went through a list, and finally after a while, the man said, President Ricks, I think I'll just sit down and observe for a while. And so these wonderful Rexburg bishops and President Ricks had done enough that the next day the man came in and he said, now my team have arrived from wherever they were coming from across the country. What would you have them do? The reason, that's a Ricks College student. If you ask me what is my vision of the future? Now President Ricks, I don't know if he ever went to Ricks College or not, but he was Ricks College. Well, he was named Ricks through and through. Knowing what to do, doing it fearlessly, leading people who were willing to make any sacrifice. And then, the yellow school buses poured in with people from all around to help us. And we had thousands of people for dinner that night at Ricks College because they lost their homes. And I watched the process of great Latter-day Saints under terrible pressure, valiantly, at complete self-sacrifice, dealing with what had to be dealt with. That's the kind of people that have always supported Ricks College and the kind of people that Ricks College produces. And so, to me, it was just a great affirmation that what I had felt of the strength of the place was real. That's the kind of place it will be, I think, in the future.
President Eyring, do you have any other recollections or impressions you'd like to share with us?
I could tell stories, of course, all day long. Probably should mention my experience while I was there. I taught a class every term. I was the president of Ricks College. But I taught it with with a professor, Keith Sellers, who's a religion professor. And yeah, I would say I used to teach with him, and here's how we do it. He'd stand up and talk, and I'd listen, and I'd pray, and then I'd stand up and say, kind of like Alma and Amulek, now I'd like to add. And I saw in that process of teaching under the Spirit with someone else with faith, the power of teaching the way it's done. Not always a team teaching, but there's a kind of a way of getting God's help. And my guess is the faculty are now, to this day, still doing that, not perhaps in the same classroom, but helping each other. It's just interesting. Brother Sellers never felt jealous of me, and I never felt jealous of him. We all just wanted to help each other and help those students. And that also, there's exceptions. I mean, there were a few faculty members, they're all everywhere, not quite as supportive. But generally, that was Ricks College, is supportive of each other, supportive of the students, getting help from Heavenly Father. And I'll just tell you that I've taught in a lot of settings, but I may never have had quite as many people come to me years later and say, I was in that class with you, with Brother Sellers. And let me tell you some things that happen. And marvelous things happen when that happens. And so that's probably too idealistic a picture, because universities are universities, but there was more of that than I'd ever seen anywhere else, and I think it's still going on. The times I know that I've been back on campus, President Bednar has prepared them for me with the expectation that, he wanted to help me have the kind of experience that I've always had at Ricks College or at BYU Idaho when I was there. There's something about the way people treat each other and support each other and don't compete that allows a remarkable kind of help to come from heaven. So,
any other thoughts you'd like to share?
Probably ought to say a word of appreciation. What did it do for me? More than I can tell you. I'd had wonderful experiences at a lot of other places, but the one I had there, unique. There's nowhere I could have been asked to go that I could have had, I think, quite that experience, and I'm so grateful to it. And a lot of graduates and parents of students at Ricks College and BYU have that same feeling. It's just grateful that such a place existed and that you ever had a chance to be touched by it or someone you loved was touched by it.
Thank you for spending the time with us today. Very grateful.